Welcome back into the Arrowhead Pride Rapid Reaction Show. I'm Steven Serda, as always, joined by my guy, Rocky Magana. The Kansas City Chiefs in the regular season finale win it 28-24 on the road against the Denver Broncos. Rocky, I feel like I look terrible. I feel like my hair is all over the place, like I'm in shambles right now, just because I was so frustrated with this game for really until Melvin Gordon just said, all right, enough of this. I am ending this thing. I am tired of playing this game. We are better than the Denver Broncos, and we have no business losing this football game, and took it into his own hands, forced a fumble on Melvin Gordon, and it was scooped and scored by Nick Bolton. Incredible play, amazing play that gave the Chiefs the opportunity to win this football game and put themselves in position with a little bit of help from the Houston Texans to possibly still get that first round AFC bye. But as I mentioned, Rocky, your thoughts after the Chiefs wrap up the regular season? They finish with a 12-5 record, still a chance at that first round bye in the AFC, but this was kind of a frustrating performance from the start for Kansas City.
Not confident, Steven. Not confident at all rolling into the playoffs. I mean, like, this Denver Broncos offense is bad. They're bad. They're not talented. Drew Lock is not a good NFL caliber quarterback. I mean, he missed a lot of throws in this game. And honestly, Melvin Gordon, we said it all along, like, he's been a revelation since we signed him. He's kind of the guy that kind of makes this front four click. But that's how bad this Denver Broncos offense is that all it really takes is one big play from a defense to really shut them down and change the entire game. Like, they're not an offense that's really designed to come from behind and to make up points like that. They got some nice running backs in Melvin Gordon and Javonte Williams. They gave the Chiefs fits today, but the Chiefs were as much as their own worst enemy as either one of those running backs were. I don't want to take those were both talented running backs, but they're not as good as the Chiefs made them look today. And I know Tyrann Mathieu playing through some injuries, those sort of things. But wrapping up has nothing to do with your knee. You know, you can't drive through the guy. I understand that, but the Chiefs defense on the whole just didn't tackle today.
Yeah, and we were talking about this a little bit during the game. Their tackling is a problem, but their tackling's been a problem for a long time. It kind of settled down and wasn't as big of an issue when they went on that 8-game win streak in the middle of the season, and they were playing really, really sound defense across the board. But really, over the last 4 weeks or so, especially their run defense has just been straight up bad. Like, every team that they are playing is running the football against them successfully. You know, that game against the Bengals was kind of an outlier because the Bengals just said, Joe, we're just going to attack you with Joe and Jamar Chase. So they didn't even really try to run the football in that game. But when teams have committed to the run, the Chiefs are giving up a ton of yards on the ground. And it was an issue again tonight where Drew Lock had 2 touchdown runs because he was just taking off and they weren't really giving him respect, and they weren't really giving respect to his athleticism and him utilizing his legs like that, which is kind of frustrating because it kept happening over and over again. At one point, like, Drew Lock, their entire offense was just Drew Lock running the ball instead of throwing because he's just not a particularly good passer of the football. But it is a concern when you're headed into the AFC playoffs and you've got teams like the Chargers, who we've already seen them produce against you on the ground with Austin Eckler, who's a very talented running back. The Patriots and the Colts, like, are all teams that Kansas City could possibly face in the AFC postseason that are all really good at running the football, and especially the Colts with Jonathan Taylor, and the Patriots' entire offense is basically Ramondre Stevenson and Damian Harris. Like, so those teams are going to rush the football against you. And the Chiefs have proven over the last month or so that run defense isn't particularly good, but it felt like there was a lack of energy throughout this entire game, in my opinion, where I get it. It's week 18. You're banged up, and the field was just sloppy as hell. Like, the field was just falling apart, and it was affecting both teams. So I'm not going to be the guy that's going to sit here and be like, well, the Broncos did that intentionally to, like, give them some kind of advantage. Like, it was affecting both sides of the ball for both teams in this football game, it was just trash. Like, guys were just, Tyreek Hill got hurt in the pregame and he's got a heel injury, and all of a sudden he's on a limited snap count throughout this entire game. And then we saw Travis Kelce exit the game at the end with an injury. Darrell Williams did not return for the second half of this football game, and they called it a toe injury. We'll probably get an update on that from Andy Reid when he speaks to the media after the football game. But your goal coming into this game, if you're the Kansas City Chiefs, was like, yes, we know we need to win because we still want to have a chance at the first round bye. But that is a long shot. So that being a long shot, our real goal kind of seems like it's just don't get hurt in this football game. And then Tyreek Hill gets hurt in the pregame warmups. And all of a sudden it's like, man, we don't even want to be here. We don't even want to be in this game. And that's kind of how I felt throughout the entire game. Like, the Chiefs were just kind of like, yeah, we get it. We understand what we need to do to possibly have a first round bye, but then we still need some help. So it's more about us just getting out of here without getting injured, because it seemed like somebody was going to suffer a significant injury the way that field was just falling apart the entire game.
Yeah, and I don't know the severity of Darrell Williams' injury, but it wouldn't surprise me if Andy just said, listen, we got Jerry McKinnon, we got Derek Gore, we're going to roll with them in the second half, because I can't have Clyde and Darrell both out heading into the playoffs. I got to have at least one of them available because I trust the guys. But also, that being said, going back to the defense, I mean, you made him look like he was Moses Locke out there parting the damn Red Sea, in the first half. And yeah, the field was terrible. The field was horrible. But guess what? The Denver Broncos are playing on the same field, and they looked quicker than you today. The defense looked slow to get to the ball. It was one of the first times in a long time where our defense didn't look athletic enough to keep up with a Denver offense that's not that good. Suddenly, over the last 2 weeks, Charvarius Ward, who when we signed him a few years ago originally, he was a 4.35 guy. He was known for his speed, coming out of college. And suddenly he can't go stride for stride with a wide receiver anymore. I don't know what happened. I don't know if he's injured, if he's just making bad reads on the ball, but he's getting beat on straight go routes, by wide receivers in 2 straight weeks now. You got only 3 guys on the defense that seem like they're willing to tackle today, and Nick Bolton, Melvin Ingram, and who else am I saying? Oh, L'Jarius Sneed. Those are the only 3 guys who look like they want to tackle today. Willie Gay looked slow to the ball. He missed a number of tackles. They say the tackling is a lot. It's just like 99% want to, right? An attitude. And it just seemed like the Chiefs were looking ahead to next week, and they just didn't want to be there today.
So heading into the AFC playoffs then, Rocky, would you say your biggest question mark for this football team is still the defense, or is it the offense? Because the offense wasn't particularly good tonight either. The offense left a lot on the field, as always, but they opened the game with that 17-play scoring drive, and then they opened the second half with another long scoring drive. And both of those were kind of clean, precise, Mahomes just picking you apart, Andy Reid picking you apart type of scoring drives. But other than that, they lacked the explosive component once again. And I know McCole Hardman did wind up having like that 44-yard catch and run. And he had 2 other plays that looked like he could have taken them to the house if he would have just broken a last-second tackle attempt, and wasn't able to do that, unfortunately. But McCole Hardman actually had a pretty nice game in this one. But I think there's reason to still be concerned about the offense. And now the defense, we were finally starting to make that turn and be confident in the defense. And in the last 2 weeks, you're kind of like, I don't know. It's finally coming back down to earth, but this is not the time I wanted it to come back down to earth. So I'm heading into the playoffs with question marks on both sides of the football, personally.
I mean, I feel like Alex Trebek right now. I just got like a whole board of questions right now that I just want to ask this team. Like, Steve Spagnuolo, can we make some adjustments in the game? Dave Tube, what's wrong with your special teams? Why do they keep on making mental errors back-to-back weeks that cost with Zane Anderson roughing the kicker, Zane Anderson with the hold on the Byron Pringle return last week? Like the guy's an undrafted guy, and you always want to root for the underdog. But come on, man, that's back-to-back weeks that you put 7 points on the board for the opposing team, and you took 7 off for your team. Like that's unacceptable. And then you turn around, and you have 2 guys down there, and you can't down the ball inside the 1 yard line. Those are mental errors. Lock it up. You're at the point of the season where you got to be playing your best football, and the Chiefs are not playing their best football. They're not playing their best offensive football. The wide receivers outside of Tyreek Hill did not make plays today. Josh Gordon, if you're not going to make a contested catch and use your size, then I don't know why you're on the field at this point. And I love you. I hope your road to recovery, everything that's going on in your personal life, I blessings and I pray for you. I pray for you, and I want you to be a success. But at some point, you got to perform on the field. And today, there were a number of mental errors where guys needed to step up, and they honestly looked like they were just going through the motions.
Yeah, and like I said, this game from the start, it felt like there was just kind of a lack of energy, right? Like there was no like plays that like where you're like, okay, like they are ready for this football game. There just wasn't a lot of juice for this one from the Kansas City Chiefs. And like I said, I think it's kind of understandable. Like it's week 18. These guys are already tacking an extra week on to the regular season that they're not really used to, and they're trying to make sure that they're healthy for this playoff run. And a lot of these Chiefs players are probably just like, we just want to get to the playoffs, man. Like, we don't even want to be here. This game's stupid. Why are we doing this? But they still needed to go out and take care of business because that first round bye could wind up being huge, especially now if we're talking about, Clyde Edwards-Helaire was not available today. If he needs some more time to get healthy, Travis Kelce left the game a little limpy at the end there, and they said it was some kind of hip injury. Now if he needs some time, Tyreek Hill, who has seemed kind of just banged up throughout the entire season, really. Like, I know he still played. He's still been a super productive player, but it seems like he's been battling several like minor injuries throughout the entire year. And then he gets hurt in the pregame warmups and barely plays in this football game. This passing attack is a major concern if Tyreek Hill has to miss any time. If Tyreek Hill is not healthy at all for the entirety of the playoffs, if you expect the Kansas City Chiefs to make a deep run in the postseason, because he is the passing offense. It's him and Kelce. Like, I know we've seen Byron Pringle with his moments, and McCole Hardman had a nice game tonight, but you mentioned Josh Gordon. Josh Gordon just simply can't catch the football anymore. It's not that he hasn't been getting opportunities, and it's not like he's getting a ton of targets or anything, but when he is getting targets, he's not doing anything with them. He is not accomplishing anything within the offense, and he's not really helping the Chiefs when he's on the football field. And so you can't rely on Josh Gordon. McCole Hardman had a nice game tonight, but generally you can't rely on him overall. And Byron Pringle just is kind of a dude. Like, he's a nice player, good story. I love it when Byron Pringle has big games, but Byron Pringle's not a star playmaker or anything like that. This offense is going to live and die with Patrick Mahomes, Travis Kelce, and Tyreek Hill. And you got to make sure that those guys are healthy because you can't win in the playoffs without them. And it kind of felt like that was the approach to this game, where it was just don't get hurt, sloppy field conditions. We don't even really want to be here. If we lose the game, we lose the game, whatever. But if they had lost this game, the Chiefs could have fallen all the way to the 4 seed in the playoffs if everything worked out right on Sunday across the AFC with some of these other teams winning football games. Now that they did, they have locked themselves into the 2 seed. So if you don't have that much faith in the Tennessee Titans and you think the Tennessee Titans could possibly get upset after that first round bye if they do beat the Texans on Sunday, then all of a sudden the Chiefs are back in a situation where you got to go to Arrowhead in the AFC playoffs. So getting the 2 seed's still a huge deal. It's still a big deal for the Kansas City Chiefs. It just didn't seem like they cared that much about it today.
No, and I mean, and here's the thing though: if you don't care about it, then why play your starters? Andy Reid and the rest of the coaching staff apparently cared about winning today, and they know that the 1 seed is still in play. Otherwise, you would have rested everybody. So if the coaching staff thinks that it's important, then get the players on board. Or either go all in or go all out. Don't go halfway and kind of have this like, we're going to play just enough guys, just enough minutes to win. and then try to pull them back. That's the same thing that they tried to do last year, where they said, we're just going to turn it on for the playoffs and then everything's going to be fine, and it got them in trouble come the Super Bowl. You can't just, in the NFL, players are too good. Even the bad teams have enough good players that if you don't turn it on and bring your best game every single time, you're going to get beat. The Detroit Lions have a couple wins this year. They're not a good team, right? But listen, if you don't show up, you're going to get beat. And the Chiefs thought that, like, I'll kind of show up today. I'll show up just enough. It's like when you go over to your mother-in-law's house for dinner and you say, I'm going to engage in just enough conversation that they're not talking about me after I leave, right? You're not really there to be there. You're there because you have to be there. And that's what it looked like today.
So I do want to go back to the defense and highlight this game-changing play by Melvin Ingram because, man, the way the defense has struggled, against the Bengals last week and then this weekend, what they did early in the season before they acquired Melvin Ingram. Like, Rocky, I think we'd be talking about this team very differently if they had never acquired Melvin Ingram at the trade deadline from the Pittsburgh Steelers. He's been incredible. He has just been a massive playmaker. And so I pulled the play of the game because this is what the deciding factor was. And I know the Chiefs made plays at the end to seal it, but they could have lost this game because it looked like Denver was going to get into the end zone, and they probably should have if it wasn't for this play.
Gordon could not have been and lost the ball. Gordon fumbles, and it's picked up. Nick Bolton, the former Missouri Tiger, with a game-changing play. A scoop and score.
Nick Bolton was getting a little gas there at the end.
Yeah, he was struggling. He was a little injured that could there at the very end.
Yeah, once he got about 40 yards down the field, he was like, "Hang on, oh, this is far. I'm not used to being the scoop guy. What is going on here?" But Melvin Ingram was just. It felt like in that single play, like that's the impact that he has had on this defense, in my opinion. And I know he's not playing every single snap or anything like that, but when he is on the field, he is a difference maker for them. And that felt like a veteran player who was frustrated and who was like, no, we're not playing as hard as we can. We have showed up and played sloppy football today when I want a week off going into the playoffs. So I'm trying to win this football game and give us a chance. And Melvin Ingram just said, all right, I'm doing it myself, and just did it. And that was the deciding play in the game. That was the first time all game I got excited and got out of my seat. It was like, yeah, let's go. Because it was just that kind of football game. There was just a lack of energy throughout the entire contest, really, until that Melvin Ingram hit.
Oh, 100%. And kudos to Melvin Ingram on that play. I feel like sometimes we talk about Melvin Ingram like we think he's like Myles Garrett or TJ Watt on this podcast. But, he's a savvy veteran. And there's at least 2 or 3 plays a game where his pedigree shows up, right? And he had on that play, he had Drew Lock's snap count down. Like he knew when it was coming. He got a great jump off the ball, made a great move, and he was in the backfield, as soon as the ball was handed off. I can't say enough. That was what the Chiefs needed when they needed it the most. And that's what your stars do. And, at this point, you want to say the stars on this Chiefs defense, usually you say Chris Jones, Tyrann Mathieu, maybe L'Jarius Sneed. But at this point, is Melvin Ingram kind of like the Darrell Williams of the defense? He's not the most flashy guy, but when you need him and you need something to happen, when you need a play, he's the guy that's going to show up for you.
Yeah, he's been the catalyst that has made a lot of the other stuff work, and Chris Jones was quiet tonight. And I know everybody on Twitter and social media was like, $1 million sack. Like Chris Jones hits $1 million bonus if he gets another sack. Like he's got to get a sack. And I don't believe that he actually wound up getting it, but I am a little concerned about Chris Jones since he's come back from COVID, and I don't want to speculate, but he did say when he met with the media a couple of weeks ago that it was bothering him and that it was affecting him and it kind of screwed up his stamina, and he was still trying to work his way back from that. He had 2 sacks last week against Cincinnati, and he was great in that football game, but it seems like hasn't been quite the same kind of game wrecker, I guess, that we were really seeing him turn into once they added Ingram and once Jaron Reed started having an impact and Frank Clark was healthy. And so I'm a little bit worried about him, where it's like, okay, that bye could play a huge role for this team. If the Texans can show up tomorrow and pull off this upset, like that bye could be huge. And so the defense overall, I think you have to be frustrated with the way they played, but kind of like the Cincinnati performance, I still don't come out of this game thinking that I learned that much about the Kansas City Chiefs, because I've seen what it looks like when they play mistake-free football and they play the way that they're supposed to. And the offense does everything that it's supposed to. And the defense shows up and they cover their assignments, fill their gaps, do everything that they're supposed to do on the football field. And that's a really good football team. But I feel like we've had more performances like this one against the Denver Broncos than we have like complete game performances. I would say their best complete game performance as an overall team throughout the entire season was probably against the Pittsburgh Steelers. And even offensively, they kind of left some stuff on the table in that game, but they were totally dominating it. So it didn't really matter. But headed into the playoffs, like, I'm still concerned that we're 18 weeks into this thing, and I still feel like I have major question marks about guys getting lost in coverage and not knowing their assignments in the secondary. Patrick Mahomes having total miscommunications with his pass catchers and guys not being where they're supposed to be. And all of that stuff seems like stuff you're supposed to figure out during the season. And we're talking about the NFL playoffs and the Chiefs trying to go to a third straight Super Bowl, and they're still working on that stuff.
Well, yeah. And so with the COVID thing, it's so hard. You can't speculate. And the thing is, it affects each person so differently. You remember Myles Garrett last year in the playoffs. He had COVID a few weeks before, and we're talking, he was almost like a month out from COVID. And he was saying when he played against the Chiefs that he still wasn't back to 100% because he felt winded. You know, when you have a respiratory virus like that, there's just no telling how it's going to affect you. So, yeah, could it be affecting Chris Jones? Most definitely. But bigger than even that, you have plays like, for instance, the long touchdown run that the Broncos had. Nick Bolton filled the A gap perfectly and made a read on that play, and they bounced it over to the B/C gap, and Juan Thornhill just made a horrible, horrible read on that hole. And he was there, and he should have made that play, and he just went the entire different direction, just gave the guy an entire field of green in front of him, you know. And so that's the real concern. It's that we're in week 18. And these guys still don't know their gap assignments on plays. Like, that should have been a stop for 1 yard, and instead it was a touchdown. There's no excuse for that, Juan Thornhill. And that's where I think the argument where Steve Spagnuolo is going to come in and say, see, that's why I start Daniel Sorensen. But then you get Daniel Sorensen beat in the secondary, and it's like, can we just have two safeties that just know their jobs? You know, they can just perform at an adequate level in both aspects of the game. We either have a safety who can't perform in run defense or a guy who gets beat on every single pass. Just give us a guy who can do both at just like kind of an adequate level, and I'll be fine.
Yeah, and there was a point in this football game where you felt like, oh, the Chiefs are just going to lose. Like, they're just going to lose this football game against a much inferior team. And part of it seems like it's because they're just not interested in being here for this football game. But they did get some help in Vic Fangio choosing to kick a field goal on a 4th and goal inside the Chiefs red zone instead of going for it. Like, I feel like any logical head coach would do at that point in the game. Why would you give the ball like the Bengals did last week, like Zach Taylor did twice last week? Why would you give the ball back to Patrick Mahomes in a situation where all he has to do is get a first down and the game's over? And you're kicking a field goal when you've got nothing to play for other than possibly saving your job and screwing up the Chiefs' postseason seeding. So I don't understand what they were doing there. That's just a break that they caught. It's poor decision making by Vic Fangio and just bad management, I think, of like football process. But that was a break that they needed after they had already taken the football game over. So Chiefs Kingdom, raise your glass to Vic Fangio tonight, I guess, in his poor decision making.
You know, he's a defensive coach. And why did Vic Fangio kick a field goal? Why did we blitz on 3rd and 27? You know what I mean? Like, why do a lot of these NFL coaches make poor decisions in the moment? And I think sometimes we give these guys more credit than they deserve. You know, the NFL cycles through the exact same group of guys from team to team to team, from you either go, you're a defensive coordinator, then you're a head coach, you're a defensive coordinator, you're a head coach. I mean, you see that, Dan Quinn is getting head coaching interview buzz right now. I mean, like, why do these guys do these things? Because they're prone to making bad decisions. That's why.
Yeah.
And it is what it is.
So Andy Reid is speaking with the media right now. And if you're listening to us on the podcast, make sure you stick around immediately following the show. We'll have Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes and whoever they stick up there at the post-game podium, so you can hear it right here on the Arrowhead Pride Podcast Network. But Andy Reid was asked about some of the injured players, and he just said Tyreek Hill's got a sore heel. Darrell Williams hurt his big toe in the game, and it seems like a lot of this was just kind of precautionary. Like, maybe in a playoff game, Darrell would have come back out and played in the second half. And then he did add that Travis Kelce is fine. So it doesn't seem like Travis Kelce got seriously hurt on that final possession for the Kansas City Chiefs, which is big. And obviously Darrell has been fantastic. So I really hope that toe injury is not something serious that's going to keep him sidelined for any point in time. I'd expect Clyde to be back for the playoffs, just the way the Chiefs have kind of been talking about him the last couple of weeks. I know he didn't play this week, but it kind of seemed like a situation where they were like, Darrell's playing fine, and we can just rest Clyde. We're fine with doing that to make sure Clyde is ready to go for the playoffs. And Jerick McKinnon had a hell of a game tonight. Jerick McKinnon finally got on the field and had a pretty big role for the Kansas City Chiefs and looked like the pass-catching specialist that you expect from him. He was also running the football hard when he was getting opportunities to do that. He had the touchdown pass from Mahomes where he made two guys miss, and they were kind of filthy jukes. Like Jerick McKinnon, that's what we've kind of expected to see from him all season. I know he spent some time on IR, but when he's been healthy, he just hasn't had a role in this offense. So it's kind of interesting if Jerick McKinnon is kind of carving himself out a late season role in the passing attack headed into the postseason.
Well, if Jerry McKinnon is your number 4 back behind, Clyde, Darrell, and Derek Gore, I mean, that's a pretty good problem to have. I mean, because he's way too athletic to be your 4th best back. I really, really think that with the Chiefs and Darrell Williams, he needed 37 yards coming into this game to have his first 1,000-yard scrimmage season, which, by the way, congratulations, Darrell Williams. You made it to 1,000 yards from scrimmage and this season, which was one of your goals that you sent out on Twitter. You said you had a goal of making 1,000 yards, and you did it. So we're very proud of you. I think you hit that goal, and Andy said, all right, well, listen, Derek, there's not a lot of drop-off between Darrell Williams and Derek Gore and Jerick McKinnon. Let's just get him some reps. Let's keep Darrell, healthy enough that we can use him moving forward. It'll be interesting to see, though, if this injury does linger. I really wouldn't expect it to, though. I really, really feel like Andy said, I just kind of want to get these other two guys warmed up for the playoff push.
Yeah, and before we get out of here, I just want us to kind of give our final thoughts on this Chiefs team heading into the playoffs, whether their first game be next week or the following week if they happen to get lucky and get a bye. Obviously, expectations are high for this Kansas City Chiefs team in what's been an up and down season, but my expectation coming into this is I hope we see a different Chiefs team, because I think last year you saw that this team was so talented. They kind of sleptwalked through the regular season. I think they've done some of that this season too. I think that overall the offense has struggled more and it's not quite as talented as it maybe was last season, but the offensive line is better and that should help. And the defense has gone through a lot of growing pains, but it seems like it's still in a good position to be good enough when you get into the playoffs. And I still think that these guys have been through so much over the last couple of years, and in the postseason, they know how important the stage is. And I'd expect to see them kind of turn this thing up to another level in the playoffs. So heading into this, whether it be next week or the following week, that's all I'm hoping for. I'm looking for a dominant kind of Chiefs performance that I feel like we've been chasing for a lot of the season.
Yeah, I mean, I just want to see the Chiefs go for it. Like, I feel like in a lot of games they're holding back, and there's times where Andy Reid's trying to play the game a little too close to the vest, especially in the second half, or the players aren't giving their full effort and being completely locked in. Like, okay, here we go. You made it through the regular season. You still have a chance at the 1 seed. Vamos Texans, let's go. We really need you to pull the upset out of your hat for us tomorrow. But regardless, if you're in the 2 seed, like, there's a good chance that the Titans are going to lose in the playoffs. They're not the most intimidating team in the NFL. So that means that you have a chance of having home field advantage throughout the playoffs. Okay, that's fine. But let's go. Let's put the pedal to the metal. You get up on a team. Let's stomp on them and put them away. And let's stop playing around in the second half. There's no reason to hold back anymore, right? Like, you're in that March Madness scenario where it's win in advance. So whatever you got to do to win, I got to see you clawing and fighting your way to a victory no matter what. And that's what I want to see out of this team. I want to see some grit. I want to see some guts. And I want to see them come out swinging and just keep swinging until the job's done.
Yeah, I just think that the way the AFC has played out this year, where I don't believe there is a truly dominant team across the entire conference, I still wholeheartedly believe whether the Chiefs get the 1 seed in the AFC or not, going into the playoffs, they are the best overall team in this conference. I know Cincinnati's hot right now, and they're the popular, like, young, shiny toy, but no team in the AFC is a clear-cut Super Bowl favorite, in my opinion, which is why you have to pick the Kansas City Chiefs as the top team in the AFC. Because at the end of the day, they still have Patrick Mahomes, and they're still a very, very talented team, despite their struggles throughout the entire regular season. So I still think the Chiefs are the top team in the AFC headed into the playoffs. But we really appreciate you guys hanging out with us on a Saturday night. And no, it's been weird for everybody watching the Chiefs on Saturday. And now it's like we got to turn around and do this whole thing again for 12 hours tomorrow on a football Sunday. And we got to root for the Houston Texans to upset the Tennessee Titans. But I don't think that would be totally crazy. So I think the Chiefs still have a good chance at this first round bye. As I already mentioned, if you're listening to us on the podcast, make sure you stick around. Immediately following this show, we will have all the post-game press conferences, Andy Reid, Patrick Mahomes, anybody else that spoke with the media after the game. Please make sure that you follow Rocky on Twitter at Rocky Magana. I'm Steven Serda. That's where you can find me. Make sure you're on the lookout. Monday morning, we'll have a fresh edition of the Arrowhead Drive, get you caught up on all of those playoff scenarios and how they shape up on Sunday. And then Monday afternoon, of course, we will have Out of Structure with Ron Kopp and Matt Stagner dropping as they take a look at this entire game and probably take a look at whoever the Chiefs are going to be playing in the AFC playoffs. We'll talk to you guys soon.